One of the most common questions I hear from parents is, Marina, is my child eating enough protein? So today we're digging into the truth. How much protein do kids really need? And why you may be stressing out more than you need to? Because everyday foods that you have at home, like pork, beans, and yes, even a bagel might be enough. Welcome to the Messy Bite Podcast. Welcome back to the Messy Bite Podcast, where feeding kids gets real, a little chaotic, but you will always find joy in the menu. I'm Marina Chaparro, your host. This episode is supported by the National Pork Board. If you are a healthcare professional, we invite you to sign up to Pork and Partners, a community focused on the needs of healthcare professionals like myself. It provides free continuing education, featured recipes, evidence-based resources, and peer-reviewed research. You can sign up at www.pork.org, subscribe to our monthly email, all separated by dashes, or you can always find it in the show notes. Check it out. So nowadays, you go to any supermarket and what you'll find is the words protein written in a lot of different foods, whether it's protein powders, protein drinks, protein granola bar, protein pastas, protein popcorn. But let's discuss a little bit, why has protein become this new hot topic? And I think partly it's been culture, it's been media, has made us also fear carbs. I feel like we're back to when fat was really bad and used to be seen like a bad thing. I think now carbs got that rep, and therefore protein is like the new hype. But I do think it's mostly here in the US because every time I travel abroad, there isn't a fixation as I see here in the United States, and we even see it more in younger and younger kids. And so in the United States, market trends indicate that protein-containing food products have grown from 600 million in 2008 to 1 billion in 2013, and they're projected to reach 1.6 billion in 2018. I guess we're like protein obsessed here in the United States. But also, protein is linked with, strength, with growth, with maybe even, quote unquote, doing the right thing. And we'll get to this a little bit later about understanding protein's role, especially in kids' growth. But here's the thing. Research shows that most kids in the United States already meet their protein needs. Yes, thankfully, let's repeat that again. Research shows that most kids in the United States already meet their protein needs. So I think this is first a reassurance for us parents that we're not deficient in protein. Most kids already meet the protein needs without fancy powders or panic. Granted, I do have another episode on protein powders, and there could be some medical situations or some unique nutritional needs where protein powders could be useful. Check it out. But as we'll talk about later in this episode, protein can actually come from a lot of everyday foods that you may or may not already realize your child already eats. And so it's not going to be that hard for your kids to get enough protein. So we're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you exactly what that will look like. So why do toddlers refuse protein? Or why do parents worry about protein? Well, it often coincides with a normal feeding behavior that we see in toddlers, that is food neophobia. In other words, food refusal or a fear of new foods. And this could be the start of picky eating. So oftentimes when parents come to me and they ask this question, Marina, my child is not eating enough protein. Well, it actually coincides that they're either in the terrible twos, they're in that developmental picky eating phase where they're not eating many foods, and oftentimes animal proteins might become one of these foods that they start refusing. Therefore, parents start to worry. So picky eating, selective eating, usually heightens at around 2 years of age. So yes, if you're in this moment, mom or dad, and you're like, my child used to eat everything before, but now he doesn't want to eat anything. He stopped eating. I can probably guess he's at around the 2-year age. And there's reasons why this happens. One, it could be textures. Meats and animal meats could be harder, could be tougher to chew and require more mechanical work. And for some kids, they get tired. It could also be that they're looking for comfort foods. So they're looking for higher carbohydrate, faster energy, easier to digest energy. So they are going to gravitate towards softer foods, even predictable foods. I have another episode that I talk about why kids tend to gravitate toward carbs, because they are fast energy. They tend to be repetitive, easier on the textures. Think pasta, noodles, bread. Who doesn't love that? And also realizing that kids in this age do require a lot of carbs, and their brain is going to utilize more carbs and more fast energy because they're growing so much. So kids' brains run on glucose, and naturally, this drives them to have greater carb cravings. So again, the brain glucose utilization is highest in childhood, particularly peaking around 5 years of age. So this is when the young brain is going to be consuming twice as much glucose of an adult brain per gram of tissue. So because of all these reasons that I talked about, some kids might not be that into protein. Just realize that this is a phenomenon that could be happening. And so this happens a lot. And just last week, I had a mom come see me at Nutrichicos, really worried that her daughter was 2 years old and she used to eat everything. And she was telling me she would used to eat the beans, lentils, salmon, avocado, pork, meat, everything. And now all that she wanted was bread and noodles and bread and pasta. So yes, this is very, very normal. It is part of development. It is not a sign that you're failing, but this doesn't mean that we're only going to be giving her bread and noodles because your 2-year-old is asking and we're afraid of them. Frankly, that could happen sometimes, but it's for us to understand that, this is part of their development because of everything that we just talked about. But what could we do to, balance her diet, continue exposing her to new foods, and again, reintroduce her to different textures. So more on that later on what mom and dad can do. So let's quickly talk about why protein matters. I mean, we know that it's important, but let's talk about specifically for kids, things that you may or may not know. So we know, again, protein is essential. It's going to support growth, muscle, tissue repair. It makes up 20% of the human body and is present in every single cell. So again, it's going to be important for things like hair, nails, skin, muscles in the blood, but especially for kids, especially in those first 1,000 days or AKA 2 years of life, protein is going to be very important for brain development because protein is responsible for constructing new cells in tissues in the brain. So their component, because they're amino acids, they serve essentially as building blocks for neurons, neurotransmitters, hormones, enzymes. So thereby supporting structure development of the brain. So yes, protein is extremely important. We also know that other essential nutrients important for brain development are things like zinc, iron, choline, B6, B12, and they are found mostly in animal products like meat, chicken, pork. And there's been some interesting studies done on animal-based products in the early childhood. And it's still limited, but some of the findings suggest that consuming animal-based foods in the early years, like whether it's eggs, pork, meat, has been associated with improved cognitive development. So again, of course, we're going to want fruits and veggies, but a lot of people are surprised that we also are going to recommend other foods like animal-based foods because they provide key nutrients for brain and development. So again, we talked about the B12, the iron, the zinc. This is where we're going to find them. We know animal sources are excellent sources of key nutrients. And we know that lean pork, for example, provides zinc, choline, B6, B12, all of which are key nutrients for brain development, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. And lastly, the other reason why protein is really important is because protein supports oral motor skills. Surprisingly, like chewing, like biting, like texture development. So this is why protein is also going to be really important, because if you only provide soft foods, they're not going to build up those skills that they need to chew, to bite, to strengthen their motor skills. So feeding babies and toddlers foods in different textures and different forms, like finger food, can help them develop not just dexterity and eye coordination, right? They're having to do this and manipulate two different things at once, but also chewing, swallowing, and even speech development, right? And so that's why giving kids early lots of different varieties, not just in flavor, but also in texture, is really going to be important. So now let's talk about how much protein does your kid actually need? So let's break it down age by age in simple terms. We're going to talk about ages 1 to 3 years old. They need 13 grams a day. I mean, that is not a lot. You're going to see later on what this means. Ages 4 to 8 need 19 grams a day. Going into the preteens, 9 to 13, 34 grams a day. And then the teen boys need 52, while the teen girls need around 46. So what's the call to action? What does this mean in real life? You're like, Marina, I just heard a bunch of different grams. You're like, I have no idea what foods actually have. Let's talk about this. So 1 cup of milk has 8 grams of protein. 1 large egg has 6 grams of protein. 1 pork meatball has 7 grams, around an ounce. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 8 grams. 1 slice of bread, depends on the bread, but many breads might have anything like 3 grams of protein. I know, this one's really surprising. 1/2 cup of pasta. And no, I'm not talking about the protein-enriched pasta. This is just regular semolina pasta. 4 grams of protein. 1/2 cup of black beans. Arriba los frijoles, 8 grams of protein. That's why we love beans so much. And 1 ounce of shredded pork, one of my favorites. Arriba las carnitas, 8 grams of protein. But what I will also mention is that what's interesting about pork is that a lot of the studies have found that pork is a carrier food. In other words, pork is going to help consumers or people and families eat other, especially under-eaten foods and under-consumed foods like veggies, beans, and whole grains. Because if you really think about it, we never just eat pork by itself. Like, we eat it with beans, we eat it with rice, we eat it with some salsa, with some veggies. So I love that. And researchers believe that when pork is on the plate, around 2.5 million children and 5.7 million meet potassium recommendations. Again, the potassium coming from the fruits, the plant. So we like to say that pork is a friend of plants because it is a carrier food. So with now everything that you've seen here, I mean, it's going to be pretty simple for your child to meet protein needs. If your child is a toddler, they need 13 grams, essentially 1 egg, 1 glass of milk, and 1 pork meatball. You're good to go. Or half a cup of beans, peanut butter, and some shredded pork, listo. So as you can see, I mean, there's no reason why we need to be panicking about protein, because everyday foods like the ones I just mentioned, they're really going to cut it. Let's talk about surprising protein sources that you just might not even think like, well, they're in a phase that they're not really liking animal protein. Don't you worry, I got you covered. Bagel, 8 grams of protein for a medium one. Broccoli, 3 to 4 grams per 1 cup. So that might be a little bit more than your child might need, but still. We talked about pasta. Oats, yes, for oatmeal, overnight oats, muffins with oats, 6 grams per cup cooked. And lastly, peas, petit pois, chícharos. This is one of my favorite, just convenient frozen foods, 4 grams per half a cup. So again, what's the message? Protein adds up quickly, even from the foods that you just didn't expect. If you feel like all they're eating is just bread and some pasta and some bagels, I mean, that might happen 1 week, but small amounts of protein will add up. All right, so let's talk about takeaways and what can parents do? What can you do to stress less about protein? So realize again, protein is not going to be one of those nutrients that your kid will probably fall short on, but here is what we could do. Let's include at least 1 protein per meal. It doesn't need to be the star of the show, right? We could just, be a side dish on the plate. We can mix and match animal-based protein with plant-based protein for balance. Very important to modify textures, right? So we can do ground meat, we could do shredded pork, we can also do beans, we could do yogurt and milk. So really important to combine different textures, again, for that oral development. Let's normalize cultural favorites. Yes. So frijoles de olla. I mean, I grew up with frijoles de olla. Arroz con carnitas, lentil soup, whether it's quesadillas, all of these cultural staples are protein rich. And I'm going to say, of course, we can lean into convenience. So whether it's yogurt patches, whether it's cheese sticks, leftover pork tacos, easy protein. And maybe we just add it to the side or include it in your pasta. So protein doesn't have to be super complicated. And lastly, I think every parent needs new recipes and needs new inspiration. So whether we try, pork loin shredded into some arroz or some added veggies in a stir fry, or I'm also going to be including one of my favorites, which is albóndigas or meatballs, pork meatballs in the air fryer. This is one of my favorite because it is convenient, because I make it quick and simple. I'm going to include it here in the show notes that you can get a free PDF. So it's just great for you guys if you're looking for convenience and another way to just change up the protein in your kids' diet. And now it is time for our Messy Bites Real Life Challenge. So this week, we're going to do an exercise that will help you realize how much protein your child is actually getting. That way we can just kind of relax and just be a little stress-free. So I want you to write down all the protein food that your child has, because I gave you a table. I gave you all the list and the amounts. So include the obvious and not the obvious ones. So we said pasta, we said yogurt, we said milk, eggs, the meat, the morning bagel, the peanut butter. So write it down and add it up. And hopefully you're going to more likely see that you're doing better than you think, and you don't need to be stressing about protein. So let me know what you find. Tag me along or write a comment here of some of the surprising things that you find by doing this exercise. I would love to celebrate your wins. And with that, I want to thank you, but first I want to thank our sponsors of this episode, the National Pork Board. So if you are a healthcare professional we invite you to sign up for Pork and Partners. This is a community focused on the needs of healthcare professionals. It provides free continuing education opportunities. They provide featured recipes, evidence-based resources, and peer-reviewed research. Sign up at pork.org. Subscribe to our monthly email. You can also find it in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. And if you have a friend, a mom, a comadre that is so worried about protein, you're going to send her this podcast. You're going to be like, there you go. You'll thank me later. Hasta la próxima. Until next time.